Hi, Dana. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for agreeing to this interview. I feel like I start all my interviews with I'm so excited because I'm usually very excited to speak with my guests. But I feel like you are literally the godmother of unschooling. So I think this interview is just gonna blow people's minds.
Well, I hope it brings people a lot of new knowledge, a lot of awareness. I think a lot of what I share is very like intuitive to people and they know these answers deep down. And I feel like this philosophy is not something I invented. It's something everybody knows. And I just allow people to feel it and to say, yes, the way you felt before you were right. It's society that's conditioned you to think you were wrong. So it's an honor to be here. I'm so happy that I could do this.
Thank you. I'm going to start with your bio.
Sure.
Dana is the author of Radical Unschooling and Raising Rebels. She has been inspiring others for almost 2 decades by sharing her experience through natural birth, attachment parenting, and unschooling. She loves traveling the world, helping families change their lives by changing their parenting paradigm and bringing more peace and connection to their lives with their children. Did you have anything you wanted to
No, that was great.
add? I've interviewed several unschooling parents before, and they've been doing it. They started back in the 70s, but I truly consider you the godmother of unschooling just because you've built such a movement around it. I mean, you've probably touched thousands of families and continue to touch thousands of families.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been amazing. Like I never planned on doing this. It just happened really organically. And I think because I was so proud of the lives we were living that I just started living out loud and sharing. I started on a blog way back when, before there was social media. And oh my goodness, yeah, it's been quite a trip. And so many people were responsive to it. And I think the thing that really launched my career as an advocate was being on the Dr. Phil show back 18 years ago. How long ago was it? So Ivy wasn't even 2 yet, and she's 20 now. So yeah, 18 years ago. That
Wow.
really launched it in a unique way because I was not prepared to be on stage with Dr. Phil. I wasn't expecting that to happen. Somebody posted in a Yahoo group before there was social media. So this is crazy. Back in the day, I'm going to just
Yeah,
tell you youngins how it was back in the day. We communicated through Yahoo groups.
right.
And I had a Yahoo group called Radical Unschooling, and somebody posted in the group that Dr. Phil was looking for homeschoolers. And I clicked on the link and I'm like, oh, this will be fun. I'm going to just blow his mind about radical unschooling and just be kind of rebellious in my responses. And never in a million years thinking I'd ever get a call back. Well, a month later, the Dr. Phil show called and said, we want to come out and film your family for 12 hours and then fly you out to be on the show. And we were like, what? I thought it was a joke. And I was,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, totally. And that was it. And everything started then. Our family was flown out. We appeared on stage with Dr. Phil. I was not very good at answering the questions about unschooling, but I didn't run off stage, which I wanted to do. And I think this is like something I want to tell anybody listening that as long as you show up and you be brave enough, you do not have to have the perfect answers. You just show up and you be brave enough to answer the questions, and you wouldn't believe the opportunities that will come to you as a result of being brave and putting yourself out there. And that's all I did. Over time, I got better at the answers. I cultivated my skills. I had like a speaking coach. I wrote a couple books. The first one wasn't the best written book, but I got better. So all you have to do is show up and say yes, and you'd be surprised what you can accomplish. So, again, I wasn't expecting to be an advocate for this life. I just kept saying yes to every and all opportunities. After we were on Dr. Phil, Nightline called, and we were on Nightline, and we were on Fox News, and we were on Wife Swap, and like you name it, like we had reality shows like coming to us that wanted, produce producers that wanted to do reality shows, and like it was just a crazy thing. We just kind of blew up in the mainstream as the poster family for unschooling, and my kids were put in the limelight, and they learned a lot from the experience.
Yeah.
We traveled the world speaking. I went to India, China, Australia, like speaking about this life. And so I think a lot of my advocacy was just being willing to say yes when a lot of people would never have said yes to the things I said yes to. Maybe I was a little crazy. Sometimes living this life means you're going to be a little crazy.
Yeah.
But the beautiful, beautiful thing that happened as a side effect of my career is that I was happy to help a lot of people come to this life, because when you see somebody on TV talking about it and you can relate to it and you're like, wow, okay, everybody in the audience of the show thinks this lady's crazy, but I relate to her. That is, that was a lot for a lot of people. So yeah, being the, like what you say, godmother of unschooling, I mean, like what an honor to even like have that label at all. Like I don't know if I can accept something so such an amazing label, but thank you for calling me that. And yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have. So I know we have a lot to cover, don't we?
I mean, a lot, but also, not a lot. I love that you shared that story because not only is it in, the appearances that came to you when you say yes, but generally when you are considering, as a parent, when you're considering unschooling, as long as you say yes and you have
Mhm.
that intention,
Yes.
the universe delivers all the opportunities,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So it's
amazing.
not just about, you don't even need to want to tell anyone what you're doing.
Right.
For your child and for your family, if you set that intention and you say yes, the opportunity to show up, and you've been
Mhm.
doing this for 18 years.
Me?
And
Yeah.
even prior to that, there were people that have been doing it. Like, life has always been
Mhm.
unschooling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
learning doesn't come from physical structures
Mhm.
where you sit in a classroom. That's just the reality. And that's the
Mhm.
programming that we're trying to deprogram from right now and know that life is living.
Okay, I love that. Oh, I love so much, Belinda, you saying that this life is about saying yes. So it is. I mean, people always ask me, like, how do I begin unschooling? And the first thing is to say yes to your child more. Now, when people first hear that, they don't really understand what I mean. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. It means really questioning the things that you've said no to, or the things that people have said no to you about when you were a child, and saying, how can I say yes to this? When you can say yes more, or some form of yes, whether it's yes, we can do that as soon as I'm done this, or yeah, let's look into that together. Being in the yes energy and partnership with your child is the heart and the foundation of this life. So living in partnership rather than in the traditional authoritarian paradigm, which in the traditional authoritarian paradigm of parenting, which is what 99% of parents do in our culture, the parents' needs come before the kids' needs solely. And parents'
100%.
needs for quiet, uninterrupted sleep, and above all, obedience and compliance. And it sounds kind of harsh to say it that way, but it's true. I mean, look at most parenting techniques, even gentle, like quote unquote gentle ones, like timeouts, are really focused on obedience. And living this life, unschooling, we're coming to everything from a different perspective. We're coming to it from a partnership based paradigm. And that means that we focus on the needs of the kids, of our children, as much as our own. Now, that might sound like obvious. Well, why wouldn't we live this way? Well, our culture's not set up that way. And so this is the most radical part of radical unschooling, actually, is the parenting side of it. You know what I mean? Because
Oh
so
my
what does it mean to live in partnership? It means to focus on the needs under your kids' behavior instead of behavior modification. Even gentle, like gentle parenting. I've watched a lot of gentle parenting, like stuff, just out of curiosity. And I love that TikTok exists. I love that social media exists to really like get other perspectives out there, but it's still in the authoritarian paradigm. How to gently control your kids. So unschooling is about letting go of control and focusing on connection. And you know, uh, how to go about doing that is what people need the most support with. So saying yes to your kids means saying yes to learning. It means that when we have limits and control and we say no to things, we're really limiting learning. Now, when people hear these kind of things, especially when I've been on like talk shows and stuff, people just get kind of extreme in their life. But what if your 11-year-old wants to do crack? Or what if they ask me outrageous questions, like with the assumption that kids want to do things that would harm themselves, but they don't. When kids are in partnership and with a good relationship with their parents, they trust what their parents are saying. They look to their parent as a trusted resource. And so when we give our kids information, they believe us. They know that we're not the wall standing between them and their desires, They look to us as a trusted guide, as someone who loves them, and they're, kids don't want to do anything that's going to harm themselves by nature. So I try to get rid of the extreme questions, but they always come at me come at me with those.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I really love that idea of being in partnership
Yeah.
because it's so common for us to want to teach our kids things. We know these things, the paradigm right now is we know these things, and so
Yeah.
we need to teach it to our children,
Mhm.
and we don't.
Mhm.
They
Right.
know, just like you're saying, they're not wanting to self-harm. If yes, you might have a child who does want to self-harm, but could that be because of the way he or she has been raised?
Well, yeah, and a lot of times kids will do want to do things because a human being's desire for freedom will override anything. And so if you control something or limit it and say, you're going to be punished if you do XYZ, a child's freedom will override common sense. You know what I mean? And so they will
Mhm.
strive to do things. Like, how many times have you, Linda, in your life? I know me as a teen, when somebody would tell me no or not to do something, the adults, that's the first thing I wanted to do because I wasn't trusted, I wasn't respected, I wanted to feel empowered, I wanted to feel freedom. I forgot about even what it was, but I know I just wanted to do it if I was told
Right.
not to. So
Oh,
human
absolutely.
beings, yeah, when something is controlled or limited, like our innate desire for freedom will make us like have this really intense need or desire for whatever's being controlled or limited. So yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't understand, and I think it's a really important piece of partnership parenting is learning to let go of control with things and giving your kids freedom and allowing, kids to find balance with things so they can, self-regulate with technology, like foods. People have a really hard time with giving freedom, so there's a whole lot of fear surrounding these things, but with trust and learning how to parent peacefully and respectfully and in partnership, kids really do have balance with all of
Yeah.
these things parents fear.
Right. And we really need to, I feel like as a parent and listening, reading your book and listening to the audiobook, it's it really has me going back and really questioning what I'm saying. What is my intention when I am saying this? And is it coming from fear? And where is this fear coming from? And do I want to allow her to have her own journey, make her own choices? And it's a lot,
Yeah.
because I wasn't raised that way and I was insecure. So it's really a constant conversation that I have with myself. I want to refer to something that you wrote in the book.
Okay, sure.
Um, all humans are born with a natural sense of self-worth, self-love, and a healthy level of self-esteem. Schools rob them of that, and parenting. And that that just breaks my heart, right? It's true. It's so
Yeah.
true. And it's a little bit why Perfect Child exists, because when I look at the world as a whole, I see that hurt people.
Yeah.
And the most hurt people are children.
This is true.
Inadvertently, as because we aren't raised, it's just like you're saying, we're raised in an authoritative paradigm and
Mhm.
we keep perpetuating it. And even though we are trying the gentle approaches or, a lighter approach or a different way, it's still dictatorial, and we rob them of their self-esteem. Oh, and speaking of that, it's like how many times do I hear parents talk about their kids and they'll be like, ugh, she doesn't know what she's doing. Or how did you get that? Oh, you got a good score. How did you get that? Or parents shame their kids all the time and it's in jest, but it's not very nice.
I know. I always feel so bad for kids when that happens. I mean, and it's so commonplace. Like, I used to get really upset when I'd hear it in public. Like, I'd get upset with the parent and judge the parent, and within myself, I wouldn't say anything. But I would feel a lot of pain for the child. And over the years, I've learned to be more compassionate within my heart for the parents that are like that because it's just such common practice. And
Mm.
instead, I'll be an advocate for the child by being respectful to the parent and maybe saying something nice that kind of builds them up because parents get really funny around each other. Like they try to, as a culture, we try to make humor based on our children, and we try to be funny, and we're trying to be like lighthearted, but it's at their expense. You know, making jokes at our kids' expense, that hurts them. I can
Mhm.
remember my mother doing that to me.
Yeah,
And she didn't mean to hurt me, but it was embarrassing. You know, like that's one thing I think is so important is never to say anything that would embarrass your child in public.
right.
So never like give them an order in front of other people. That's really
Mhm.
disrespectful to be like, guys, stop doing that or get over here. Because if your child disobeys you, quote unquote, in front of other people, it is the pressure to then go and enforce something authoritarian in front of others is really intense, isn't it?
Yeah,
So when other people are watching and you're like, guys, come here, and they don't stop, you're like, oh gosh, now I have the pressure of everyone around me and I got to go like enforce this, or they're going to think I'm weak. And so anytime I ever spoke to my kids, like if I had to like share something with them or ask something of them, I would go over to them and kind of like gently say it like quietly, just so it was between us, like, hey guys, I think do you want to get going soon? Like, what do you think? That way there was never that like people looking,
right.
judging. So there's a lot of like little tips and to be more respectful to your kids in public.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that kind of reminded me of that, like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, like I said, your book is filled with radical concepts that you engaged in. And one of the things that I was hoping you could share is you talk about your daughter Tiff's bedtime routine and how long it was. And even though it was really long, you never once tried to coerce her to shorten it or demean her wishes in any way. Can you please share what her bedtime routine was?
Well, it's funny because as you're saying that, so keep in mind, I'm gonna tell you guys the ages of my kids. Okay, so Orion, my youngest, is 17, Ivy's 20, Tiffany, who we're talking about here, is 23 now, and
Mhm.
Devin is turning 26 in 2 days this Saturday. So it's almost the 26th year anniversary of becoming a mother. So Tiffany's bedtime routine and Ivy's bedtime routine is very long, both of my girls. And they just like to have they would just love to have me there. Like Ivy would love to get all her stuffed animals like next to her. She'd want me to say goodnight to them all. I always would say this like same thing every night that she loved me to say to her, like good night, Ivy. And she'd say, good night, mom, sweet dreams, sweet dreams. Like we go back and forth with this routine. And Tiffany was the same way too.
Mhm.
And they just loved when I would be there until they fell asleep. Now I know not every parent can do that. I understand that there's situations where where both parents are working, and I know it's kind of a luxury to be able to do this. So I'm super grateful that I was able to be a work at home parent so I could do these things for my kids. But no, I never tried to change it. And I think it's because I always knew how quickly they would grow out of these phases. So it's a level of trust that most parents don't have. And I'm going to tell you why. I think that our culture wants us to believe that in order for kids to go through certain stages and phases in their lives, it has to be forced. We have to just wean our kids when we're ready. We have to make them cry it out in a crib. We have to do these like hard things that are painful, like tough love, or they will never stop certain things. Now, that is such a myth in our culture. And so when I'm sharing about Tiffany's bedtime routine or a number of other things, like I've always trusted that my kids would outgrow the need for these things and when they were ready. And I knew that, being a La Leche League leader, so I was a breastfeeding counselor through La Leche League from 2001 for like, I don't know, over 10 years. And La Leche League did teach me a lot. I wouldn't say necessarily about unschooling, but a lot of things that felt really intuitive to me. La Leche League philosophy really solidified for me. And some of those things were that children's dependent needs are really important to meet. And so I wrote a lot about that. And
Mhm.
one thing I want to share is that when kids are designed to be dependent, they are. And when you meet those dependent needs,
Mhm.
and your child's dependent needs are when they tell you that they have them, not
Yeah,
by a book, not by an expert like some, pediatrician, not by society, not by your mother-in-law, your friends. Your child's dependent needs are valid and they're real. They're not a dysfunction. And so when you meet those dependent needs, whether it's a bedtime routine, whether it's whatever routines they have, they are more independent later. Now,
right,
everybody around you would tell you that's false. Like, oh
right,
wow, if you don't get her out of your bed now, if you co-sleep, then she's going to be in bed when she's in college. And if you don't wean her now, all of these myths are not true. In fact, The cool thing about it is I have like just about 4 adult kids. Orion's 17 and a half, well, 17 and a quarter. No rush on that. But I can tell you this from experience with 4 totally different human beings that this is absolute truth. That a child's dependent needs, when you meet them for as long as they have those needs, they will be more independent and more secure later.
right?
So, yes, I would
It
never change
makes
a thing
sense.
about any of it. I'm so glad
So
I never did.
I don't want to put your husband on the spot, but
No,
if
it's
you
okay.
never tried to alter their bedtime routine, given that it was so long, were you the sole person that ever put them to bed, or was he sometimes needed to put them to bed? And did he do the same thing, just sort of
Yeah,
allow them?
he did. He did the same. It was usually me. They preferred me just because I'm mom. Like,
Yeah,
but I was also a doula. So I was at births, sometimes if I got called out in a birth. And he would put them to sleep or they would be with each other. And yeah, so he was always very respectful of that.
that's
Mm.
wonderful. So you share a lot of radical perspectives in your book. They're they just the way that you walk in the world is so different from 99% of the parents, I would say. So, are you comfortable sharing what your upbringing was like and how you got to be you?
Sure. So my upbringing was really typical. It was a traditional upbringing. I'd say that the difference was my mother. She was very respectful of me in some ways and not so much in others. Like one thing I write about is I've never had like chore charts or forced chores. However, my kids have helped just by me asking as they've gotten older, as the tasks have become manageable for them. Like I've never had to do any of that. And my mother was the same way. So I really learned that from her, like her modeling. And she always really enjoyed housework. My mother would get so excited over having like when she vacuumed and when she'd like clean the bathtub and when she'd scrub the kitchen floor, she'd like, Dane, look at how clean it is. I love it. And so she never resented housework. She really enjoyed her role as a mother and as a homemaker. And I think that did rub off on me. And I've always kind of been the same way. I've always, my attitude has always been like positive about those things. And so I think that makes a difference for children when they see a parent who is huffing and puffing under their breath while they're cleaning. And why doesn't anybody help me? And throwing things around. And I mean, kids learn from modeling. And if you're making housework look really miserable, they're never gonna want to help. So, I mean, I think my kids have always just joyfully helped. And my upbringing was traditional. I went to a traditional school. I think, when I was a senior and I graduated, I I remember getting my report card and handed to me, and I just like went after and just threw it in the trash and realized like this doesn't matter to anybody. This was all a waste. Like no one's ever looking at this again. And there was something that happened when was a teenager that kind of woke me up to like, wait a minute, like it doesn't matter that I worked so hard in this class because it doesn't have any significance. And no one's ever asked me for my report card for my senior year, for example. And um, so my upbringing wasn't anything like special necessarily. It was just after I had my son Devin, so I knew I wanted a natural birth. And I think that was like the biggest turning point for me stepping into this life is I was able to have a natural birth, which was mind blowing to me that I was able to accomplish it. And I wanted to help other women have a natural birth. So I became a childbirth teacher and doula. And that was the beginning for me, stepping into a more attachment style of parenting. And I always co-slept. I wore my babies in slings and carriers as long as they wanted. I breastfed them until they outgrew the need. And that was something I never imagined myself doing because I always thought it was more like hippie moms that did that, like crunchy hippie moms.
Yeah.
And to me, I just listened to my kids. Like when my son Devin was born in the hospital, I remember I gave birth to this, 9.5 pound baby, and I did it naturally and I couldn't believe it. Like I was mind blown. Like, how did I even accomplish this? And this is life changing. I felt like such a fiercely protective mother. And I decided right then and there, like, I have to help other women. Like, they have to know about this. They have to know how I feel right now. And I want them to feel this. And so I gave birth to him and I was holding him for the first time. And a few minutes after he was born, I was breastfeeding him and the nurses came rushing in the room and they turned on the TV and the Columbine shootings were happening live right after my son Devin was
Mhm.
born. And so it was really weird, like for one, we're seeing this horrible, like the first time school shootings ever happened. We never even like imagined that before. And so I'm holding my son and I'm watching like mothers lose their kids, and like all these thoughts are going through my mind. And the main thought that I was thinking is like, how many of those mothers and children would have preferred to have been home, like been home together that day, but didn't know they could be. You know, most
Good
people
point.
know
Yeah.
about homeschooling, and they don't think about children's rights and freedom. And it made me think about my time in school and like never having the choice to go to school or not. So something was born in me that day. Devin being born on Columbine was just surreal, you know? And so I said to myself, as I'm holding him, like my kids will always have the choice to go to school or not, always. And it wasn't that I didn't want them to go out of fear they'd be shot. Now, you know, no disrespect to parents that have these fears. It's totally understandable. But it was, for me, it was more of like a children's rights thing.
Yeah.
Like how unfair that these kids have to go through this. And all these kids are so angry and being pent up there and forced to go that they're like hurting each other. You know, like school shootings are a phenomenon in the last 2 decades. I mean, and it's
Yeah.
hard, it's serious, you know. So that was always the position I had. That was like the heart posture I took with my children from the beginning, that you will have the freedom to go or not. Schools should be like a resource, like libraries. If you want to go, I will totally support you. So I wasn't like anti-school.
Mhm.
Now things have changed since I first started homeschooling. There's a lot of reasons to not send kids to school now.
Right.
But I will say, to me, this was a very organic unfolding, and also with parenting. So for me, unschooling is a parenting philosophy as well as a educational one. And so, you know, I'm happy to answer questions about both. But the next thing I just want to add quickly, so you can know some of my story of how I've got here. So I'm a very, again, not somebody who planned on being some kind of radical, like change maker, like at all. I was somebody who was super shy, never thought I'd be in like the limelight of like sharing about this life. But because like somebody needed to do it, I felt that, you know, like I felt that energy underneath me, like now's the time. You don't have to get it perfect, but you need to share about it. And so when Devin came home from the hospital 2 days after he was born, so the Columbine shootings happened, and I used to live in New Hampshire and I lived behind my mother-in-law. And so she came down to welcome me when I came home from the hospital with Devin. And he started like getting a little fussy. And she said, you should probably put him down, go put him in his bassinet. And I'm like, oh, well, he wants me to hold him. And she's like, if you hold him too much, he's going to expect it and he will manipulate you. And I remember like thinking like, well, so weird, you know, like, and I'm like, all right, well, I went and put him down in this bassinet, and my everything inside me was just screaming and aching to pick him back up. But I wanted her to approve of me so much because we were raised to be people pleasers, especially as women, right? Like we're raised in our culture to please everybody around us and have them approve of us. And like, I wanted my mother-in-law to think I was a good mom. And so like I let him lay there for a minute. He was crying and my milk's letting down. You know, it's a very intense, vulnerable time. And she's like, no, 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 don't do it. He'll manipulate you. Now keep in mind this baby's like 3 days old, you know? And then, so he cried there, I cried. And I remember thinking like, this is going to be hard, man. This parenting thing's going to hurt so much. I better get used to this feeling. She left and I ran over and I picked him up and I'm crying. And I looked at him. I said, I will never, ever do that to you again. Ever. Never will I ever do anything that goes against my instincts like that, ever. And I never did. I never did for him or any of my children ever again. Now I knew at that point when I was looking at him, like, this is a moment where I know I'm gonna lose some people, like, but I will always choose you. I care more about what you think of me as my child than what anybody else thinks of me. And it did cause a lot, I'll tell you, Belinda, like my mother-in-law with the years, like totally disowned me. Well, going on national TV kind of upset her. And like, so
Yeah.
that's a very long story, but I'll tell you, I want everyone to understand like the inner turmoil that I had during all this time, but how essential it was for me to grow as a woman, to be brave and to like choose my children. That's all I've ever done. I've just chosen them and shared how. So yeah,
Right.
thank you.
So let me ask you, you had that intuition.
Hmm.
What about, have you ever come across a mother who didn't have that intuition,
Hmm.
that read books and just did the things that their friends told them to, and did the crying out and
Yeah.
What do you say to
Yeah,
that?
I mean, like, I think a lot of the intuition was born like through the way I was able to birth, through like the support that I like had, like through a few people in my life, including my own mother. Yeah, I mean, most people parented this way. So most people in my life, I know have let their babies cry it out. And a lot of people will come to me for support like after they've parented in an authoritarian way and it's really hurt them and they felt bad about it. And so I think I'm kind of a rarity that I've always done this from day one. Most people haven't. So most people I work with, 99%, either let their babies cry it out or they've, chosen to live in the authoritarian paradigm, and they just hit a point where they see that the relationship with their child is being damaged and they want support and help to change. So yeah, a lot of people I know.
Would you be able to offer any advice as to how does one tap into their intuition a little bit more?
Well, I think the more you listen to it, the louder it speaks. And I think the sad thing is that in the beginning, when you are told, like, in the beginning, when, like I said, how much it hurt me inside to let him cry in the bassinet while my mother in law was there, and how torn I was. If you keep doing that, that inner voice and that pain goes away. You just become numb to it. And that's just
Mm.
what happens. And to the point where you think that's normal, you just numb to it. Your child cries, you feel nothing. And so like it's a matter of responding to that. We all feel that in the beginning, right? Everybody says that you have to have tough love and that like it hurts to be a parent. No, no, that's not true. It shouldn't. It's not true. Your intuition's telling you something, communicating with you. You have to trust your child. And so I think our culture tells us that we need to assume negative intent from our kids. It was assumed from us that they're going to manipulate you when you meet their needs, if you pick them up or you respond to them. And that's what we have to undo. That's what's so broken is like this distrust of our children that
Right.
when they cry or they're communicating something to us even before they're verbal, that they're somehow manipulating us. See, luckily, I only did that once ever in my entire life, where I listened to somebody telling me that, and I knew how wrong it was. So the way that we heal from that, we can begin to hear that voice again, is when your child's telling you something, just trust them, believe them. If they want to
Yes.
be fed, even if they just ate 20 minutes ago, like feed them again, hold them, breastfeed them, hold them as much as they want to be held. um, you know, co-sleeping was something that really built my intuition too with my kids, doing safe co-sleeping. And at one point, I co-slept. We had two queen beds pushed together in a twin bed. I mean, we had just one whole bed, like because my kids wanted to be with me and they felt safer at night. It didn't cause any dysfunction, trust me, even though everybody said it would. The opposite's true. No,
Yeah.
never. They've never had a bedwetting issue. They've never had night terrors. They've never not slept through the night, in a healthy way.
Right.
So, yeah, just listening to your heart and yourself, and especially your child. If you can't listen to your heart and your instinct because that it's so, kind of numb, start listening to your child and it will reawaken that compassion for them.
Right. Then we go back to your earlier uh, statement that always say yes.
Yeah. Try
Right?
to,
So
yeah,
if you
and
are
be
constantly
authentic.
saying yes,
Mhm.
then you will tap into their intuition and your own.
Yeah. And like when you trust them when they're saying something, like so many parenting experts will tell you when your child's ready for something. Oh, 2 is too old to have a pacifier, or you have to wean by 6 months, or all of these things that parenting experts say, and
Right.
parents just wanna do the best job, and so they're listening to parenting experts when the expert is right there, there's their child trust them, they know. They know, they know, and when they're telling you, just listen to them, and yeah, once you start doing that and you get in the habit of that, it becomes much easier.
Yes, yes, that I can see that happening.
Nice.
So I want to refer back to your book.
Sure.
And you mentioned that one of your young daughters, when they were young, when she was young, wanted to read Marilyn Manson's biography as one of the first books that she wanted to read. And you had to do a lot of self work to let her have agency over her choice.
Yeah.
Can you share more about that?
Sure, yeah, definitely. Okay, so my daughter Ivy. So first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So when I was a teenager, I was a metalhead. So I don't know if everybody knows what a metalhead is, but I loved heavy metal music. Like it was just Metallica, oh my goodness, love them from age 14. I got a lot of criticism for that, but I will tell you now that Metallica, their album Injustice for All, really speaks a lot about children's rights and freedom. So Metallica was my first entryway into this philosophy, but that's a
Mhm.
side note. So my little girl Ivy, who's 20 now, she was always like, she liked heavy metal music like me. So, we had that common theme. And I never liked Marilyn Manson because I didn't really consider it heavy metal, but she always did. So we'd listen to it and we'd talk about it. And she she really liked his art. And the first concert I ever took her to was Marilyn Manson when she was 11. Isn't that crazy? And so the first books that she wanted to read was Marilyn Manson's autobiography. Now, my son Devin, his thought was like, Marilyn Manson's kind of dark. I think we should all, let's read the book. I'll read the book and you read the book, Mom. And that way we can tell her. And Ivy said, I want you to read the book before me, Mom, and you could tell me if there's anything sexual. I don't want to read anything like that. So mark the pages that are, it grosses me out. I don't want to hear anything about it. I just want to hear about his life, like as a boy and things like that. So it's always been, because I was in a place of, yes, yeah, you can read this, but there's going to be some stuff that you are not ready to read potentially that might be kind of shocking or even damaging for you to read. So I'd really love to go through it. And she was like, okay, please, yes, do that. And so that's what I did. I went through the book. I read the whole book. I marked the pages, like, don't read between here if you don't want to be, grossed out. And the things that were in the book that were damaging was mostly about his grandfather being like a not a healthy man, like sexually
Okay.
issues. And so we read that, and my son Devin read the book as well. I think he was like 17 at the time. And so, yeah, so she read the pages that she wanted to. That was the first book she ever read from, isn't that crazy? Aside from what we marked out.
How old
Most
was
of it was about
she?
his art. She was 11. Yeah, that's the first like chapter book she read. So this is another part of unschooling that people are going to be like 11 and she read a book for the first time. Okay, guys, now we're ready to be shocked. Okay. So unschoolers, the part of the aspect of this life of unschooling is we don't believe in any forced learning. That forced learning is not learning. It's obedience. And it doesn't prove that a child will ever learn it. It's just memorization, it's force, it's coercion. It damages learning so much. It damages them. When you force a child with rewards and punishments and gold stars and force, no matter how gentle, force is force, if the child doesn't have the option or not. So unschooling is based in consensual learning, respectful learning, learning when a child wants to learn. Now, reading, writing, and math are all tools to help a human being get what they want in life. And no human being wouldn't want to learn these tools unless they were forced. Unless they were forced to
Mhm.
sit down and do workbooks against their will and do workbook pages when they'd rather be outside playing or baking or playing with their animals or doing when you're forcing a child, it damages learning so much. So much like natural weaning is anywhere between the ages of like 2 and 4, which is kind of on the long end for most people, right? They're like, what?
Yeah.
Natural reading is very different. Like kids in school are forced to learn to read by age 6 or 7 because
Right.
the curriculum in schools after that point that everybody has to be on the same page. They have to know how to read because the teacher can't cater individual learners to be different ages. They have to know how to read to be in the same place. Understandable, but that's not natural. That's not natural. In fact, natural reading is anywhere between the ages of like 5 and 13. It's natural
Yes.
reading looks really different. Now, most unschoolers, and I've worked with, like you said before, thousands in the last 2 decades. Natural reading happens between the ages. And when I say natural reading, I mean like kids reading like chapter books, like reading completely on their own happens generally between the ages of 9 and 11 for
9 and
unschoolers.
11. Right.
Now, most people think that the funny thing is, most people think that that means kids don't know how to read anything before that, but that's not true. The natural process of reading is a long process. It just looks very different. And so kids begin to learn to read, and the whole process takes, a couple years, depending upon some kids learn. I mean, by age 5 or 6, they're learning independently because they want to. They want that tool, but not all kids need it until then. So my kids learned to read at all different ages, but it was between ages of 9 and 11.
Mhm.
Tiffany, my now 23-year-old, the first book she ever read from cover to cover was a 269-page autobiography of the band One Direction. And it was for a 15-year-old. It said like 15 and up. And I
Yeah.
think she was 9 or 10 when she read that book. So when unschoolers learn to read, they're not behind. It's not like they start to learn to read and they're reading what 6-year-olds do in school. They're reading above their age level instantly because they're honored in that natural process. They're not behind at all. In fact, they're ahead in honoring that journey. But I digress. I think that might make people scared to hear those
That
those ages sometimes. My kids are all reading wonderfully now. They're all adults. They're
yes,
actually
right.
they love to read. They all read. And you'd never even tell the difference between, my kids as far
Right.
as like what they're
You would be
doing.
able to tell when they started reading. They
No,
all read.
nobody even asks them. That's the funny thing now is like, I was talking to my kids about this recently, and my son Devin's like, it's so funny because so much of our identity was that we were unschoolers for our whole childhood because we were on TV so much and we traveled the world and we were leading conferences and everybody knew them as unschoolers. He's like, now, like nobody I know even knows I was unschooled. All my friends, all my adult, nobody even knows. Like when I tell people that I was on TV and I was unschooled, they were like, what? What is that? So everybody's so worried about these things at this age. No, it doesn't even matter once they're adults. How? Like
Right.
it's not like they're going to have the identity as being unschoolers into adulthood. I thought my
Right.
kids might. I didn't know. I never thought about it, but none of them do. Their
Right.
friends now don't even know. And when they find out, they're so intrigued and blown away and so impressed
Hmm.
with my kids. It's mind blowing. My son Devin and I at our church, he started going to church, and I've joined him, and it's really just a wonderful spiritual journey for us. And the people that are there, like on the prayer team, they were asking me, they were like, Devin was homeschooled. They were like, "Wait, he's amazing. Like, that is so incredible. Like, he's such an awesome, like, human being and so thoughtful. And props to you." They don't know. They just know he was homeschooled. They have no idea who, like, I am there. You know what I mean? Like, they don't know I'm
Right.
like the
Right.
unschooling person. I'm like, yeah, he was homeschooled. But
I'm
my
the
point is,
unschooling
like, people
person.
are just, making these choices are really radical when your kids are young. But I promise
Mhm.
you, by the time they're adults, you will be so, so glad that you did this because all the time I got with my babies, both,
That's the whole point,
well, right? The
right?
time, like you
Time
will
is so
never regret.
fleeting.
You will never regret it, guys. I mean, Belinda, my kids were your little one's age, like not long ago, like
Yeah.
yesterday. It was yesterday, and like now they're adults, and
Right.
I'm so grateful that I didn't listen to all the naysayers and that I chose to do this because they're awesome human beings. They're so inspired in their lives. They don't have jobs they hate. They were never conditioned through going to school to take orders and to live a mundane life. Like when kids are put in that position against their will to be in school, even if it's private school, even if it's like homeschooling, like with a curriculum against their will, you are training a human being to just take orders and do what they're told and live a mundane life and like how we were raised. So they slip into jobs they hate. They slip into
Mhm.
professions in the same way that they were in school. Just life sucks. It's supposed to be like this. Looking at the clock. My kids were never conditioned to do that. And you know what? Today they have lives they love and they're only doing things they love, making money from it. It's crazy.
Right.
This
Right.
works. This works.
It happens. It
Yeah.
works.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is we never stop to think how little time we spend with our children
Hmm.
when they are in a conventional school.
I know.
It's not okay. And
Hmm.
why don't we just also look at the conventional schools as what they actually are? They are a babysitting mechanism.
Yeah.
So if you need to put your child in school because you have a job or whatever, this is your life choice and you want to put your kids in school, what can you do differently to help your child maintain their sense of self-esteem?
Yeah. Well, that's a really
Right?
good question.
Because
Yeah.
they could go I had a great time in school. I love school. School was great. I didn't get good grades, but I had the social life of a, social butterfly. I loved it.
Yeah.
And if you could do that, you could also be halfway there for that sort of agency, giving your children
Yeah.
agency. You know, the ideal situation I would say is what you have done with your children, because you have lived in such a radical way, not so unconventional, and now you have four beautiful grown children that are doing the things that they love, and how joyful is that? And might I add, when you talk about this being difficult at times, but the joy is well worth it, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's been a really joyful life. It's the relationship is everything to me. And like the relationship we have now is just even really uncomparable to most people that I know that have adult kids. Like we're all so close. They're so close as siblings. It's a wonderful life. And if a parent has a child in school and you don't have a choice, because there's so many situations where if parents are separated and like one of the parents like really want the child in school and they're forced to do it and they have to kind of compromise in that way. There's lots of ways for you to live this life and get the benefits. Even if you can't do exactly what I did. I mean, I think the number one thing is if your child has to go to school, you don't need to enforce the school's agenda. In fact, I never would. You know, if you
Correct.
have a child in school, you don't have true freedom. You have to ask the school permission to be with your child. And it's really, really difficult. And I want you to understand that you do not have to enforce anything. And you don't have to make a big deal out of grades either. Like we get so caught up in the school's agenda and enforcing it because that's what the authorities, that's what school wants us to do. And
Mhm.
we want to please the school. We want to be in partnership with the school, but you should be in partnership with your child. And so if your child comes home with a bad grade, oh, well, it's okay. You know, if you can help them obviously with their homework, but if they're like distressed about it, write them a note. Tell them you had family. You know, there's things you can do to
Yeah.
give your child more freedom in school. It can be challenging, but you should never put the school's agenda before your relationship with your kids. So if your child knows that and they know that you don't want to enforce that agenda, and it's no big deal. You be light about homework, be light about grades, tell them that it's really serious to schools, but the real world doesn't look at those things. Now,
Right.
it might sound a little crazy, but I mean, it's one of those things where you have to look back on when you were a child. And I think that is one of my greatest tools I could give you is to say, look back on when you were a child, your child's age, and how you felt. You can give your kids more freedom. You can give your kids more trust. You can have a better relationship by really rethinking the things that you may have said no to before,
Yeah.
you know, and stepping into more partnership and questioning the status quo of like, is this spoiling my child? And thinking about those kind of things. Are you replacing things with, you know, replacing love with things? That is what produces spoiling and entitlement. But giving to your child abundantly from a place of love, whether it's tools, whether it's experiences, opportunities, whether it's saying yes to things that some parents would say no to. I mean, you can't ruin a child with too much love. You can't hold a child and destroy them and make them spoiled and horrible by giving them love. And you know, it's the replacement of those things that damage a child. Yeah.
Yeah, and just not being able to listen to them
Yeah.
by taking society's normalized dysfunctions and putting those over your child's needs
Yeah.
and what your child wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we really have to be looking it these times ask for radical reshifting.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a lot easier now, guys, to live this life than it was for me 25 years ago. I'll tell you, it was crazy back then. Back when I was homeschooling, do you know that we were the only homeschoolers like in our town? Like it was so crazy just to homeschool, never mind unschooling, and never mind, you know, like it's so I was literally thought of in my little town because we lived in New Hampshire and there was like 2,500 people in our town and people thought we were like nuts. I was looked at like
Right.
a crazy person. And I was just like, I never felt crazy. I never felt weird, you know, like I was just like this normal mom that loved her kids and people just thought we were nuts. Nowadays, there's so many people and there's so much advocacy and there's so much,
Yes.
you know, like with social media, there's so much support of this. Like every
Yeah,
time I see something on like co-sleeping or, you know, anything like that, I'm so happy because I didn't have any of that support. And that's one of the reasons
right,
I started doing what I was doing and became an advocate because I was like, I need to help people. I had no one. And I
right.
need to help people with this. I mean, I would wear Devin, my 26-year-old, when he was a baby, I would wear him in a sling and people didn't even know what it was. They were like, what is that thing? Now, guys, I mean, like the baby wearing stuff is everywhere.
They got like the
There
Mobies
was
and like
nothing. There was nothing like that. I'm not even kidding. When I was a La Leche League leader, there was like I was teaching people how to use those things, how to use baby carriers. And now I see the growth. I see like how much what was once really radical is mainstream. And so this life unschooling, it might be like I might be a pioneer for this. It will be mainstream. in 10, 20 years, this will be mainstream, be one of many choices. I swear, if you're listening to this now, you will look
Yes.
back on this
Yep.
moment and be like, I remember listening to that podcast when this was really radical and it's mainstream now. So I just happen to be someone that's ahead of the curve for some weird reason. But I'll tell you guys, this is
Yes.
not crazy.
Now,
It's
let me
just
ask
normal.
you, do you have any advice for, okay, so there's, this homeschooling train
Mhm.
has taken off. And there are
Yes.
a lot of people that are homeschooling, but a lot of them are homeschooling and they're very frustrated
Yeah.
because they're doing school at home,
Mhm.
right? So, what words of advice can you give to help people walk into that space of unschooling?
Oh, awesome question. So I would take it a little to tell you to take a like a different view of what your role is. You don't have to look at yourself as your child's teacher. You don't need to stand in front of them pouring knowledge into them as the all-knowing authority. You don't have to know all the answers. Instead, if you look at yourself as your child's learning facilitator, like that, there's just that little bit of a tweak. You don't need to know all the answers, but you have to know how to find answers, right? And now with the internet and resources, I mean, that's easy compared to what it was, before that. And so I look at my child's interests and their passions as the nucleus of their learning. So, like if they're interested in something, I bring as many resources into their lives to learn and grow from based on that interest. And with unschooling, you don't break life down into subjects. Part of the process of unschooling is a process called deschooling. And it's part of the process where you have to realize you've been really brainwashed to see things through schooly lenses and see things like with schooly terms.
Mhm.
Like breaking life down into subjects is so unnatural. We don't live life like that as adults. We don't live life like that. It's never necessary to. My kids have never, ever been told that we're doing English, we're doing science, we're doing history. Instead, they've like pursued their passions, and I facilitated that. And in the way I facilitated it, in the way that you can as a parent, even though you don't break life down into subjects, generally every subject is touched on. And what I mean by that is
Mhm.
like, okay, I'll give you an example. So when Devin was like 4 or 5, he was really into Legos. And so I said, okay, he loves Legos. Like, what can I bring into his life to learn and grow from based on this interest? So it's a hands-on role. This is not for the lazy parent and the way we want to facilitate, right? So I subscribed to Lego magazine because I knew like his internal motivation based on what he loves. He'll want me to read that to him. Like in the
Mhm.
written word will be part of his life, and he'll be really interested in what this magazine says, and we'll sit together and read it. What a cool magazine that was. Um, Math. I was like, oh, I got like this mold for like making a Lego cake. And through making that Lego cake and measuring, we're doing math, right? So, and we loved doing that. He made Lego cakes all the time. He loved doing that. So we were touching on math. We went to visit a Lego exhibit in like the next town over. It was an old mill town in New Hampshire. New Hampshire has a lot of old mills, and they had like a Lego exhibit of like the history of this mill town. That was history.
Yeah.
We did a Lego club, and so he had friends over to do Legos. And so as you can see, by facilitating what your kids love and bringing as much into their lives, like you wouldn't think Lego would be like a subject or even a value, right? Like if you're a homeschooling parent, if your kid loves Legos, you'd never see that as learning. You'd be like, that's just playing. No, no, get sit down and do your math workbook. But if unschooling is so joy based, you never have to force your kids to do anything against their will when it comes to learning. You know what I mean? Or in general, my kids have never been forced to do anything against their will.
Right.
And which sounds crazy, but it's true. You can ask my children yourself. But yet they are very responsible. They've learned way more than a child in school could ever learn, and they've become masters at what they love doing. And there's so many different examples I can give you, like this Lego one of how I've facilitated learning and the extent of which I've gone to bring things into their lives. So it's a little bit of a shift in your role, but
Mhm.
everyone's like, how have you managed to do this? Because it's joy based and it's fun, and everybody's intentionally wanting to do it. Everybody's consenting. There's
Right.
nothing against anyone's will. Like parents have said to me when they would find out I was homeschooling, like, oh, you're so brave. I could never do that. And it's like,
Right.
the reason why they think that is because they imagine all they know is that, okay, I spend my whole, evenings and mornings forcing my kids to do things. Like brush your teeth, do your homework. In the authoritarian paradigm and controlling another human being all day, all day, all day, every day is miserable. It is. People
Yeah.
can't even imagine stepping into that role with schoolwork or like homeschooling traditionally either. They're like, my life sucks with my kid. My life is so hard as it is. I can't even imagine like forcing schoolwork too and having to get them to do it. So they're looking like at a whole different paradigm. And so when people say you're so brave, I'm like, you're brave, man. Like being having school part of your life and then like the institute, like, but they don't know that like what we're doing is joy based. It's fun. My kids are never forced. And when kids aren't forced, their life is, filled with like, so it's just a very different life. And so it's easy to do it. It's a lot of work, but when you're
Yeah,
living a joy-based life, it's so doable. And so if anyone is considering this, please trust me. There's nothing in me that is not in you, because I
right.
am not somebody that like has more motivation than the next person. I'm not somebody that it's just, I don't know why I was like chosen to do this, but here I am. And if I can do it, you can do it. So just lean on me, like reach out to me if you want to know how to go about it, because this life works and it's so wonderful. And you will never regret pulling your kids out of school. You will never regret stopping punishing them and instead become a partner with them. And my children are amazing people. And I'm so, so proud of them. And they're doing such great things with their lives. And we talked about this, Belinda, but maybe doing like a part two to this interview where maybe a couple of my kids could be here and you could ask them questions and you could
Yeah,
see who
I
they
think that
are.
would be, I think that would be really lovely. And oh, what's coming to me, I hearing your story, right? And about the learning, why it's interesting is because when you have a genuine interest in your child as a human being, an individual human being, then of course there's joy and there's no fear. It's like it's the programming again. We bring
Yeah.
these children into the world and already we have this concept of, oh my gosh, what are they going to become? What's
Mhm.
going to happen to them? We must mold them.
Yeah.
And we just have to let that go.
Mhm.
And when you let that go and you see your child for who they are and you support their own unfolding, that's where the joy is because that's that's where happiness is.
Yeah. Yeah,
Getting to know the
definitely.
child before you and the individual before you.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. And it's so true. Great thing is it doesn't end when they become adults. When they turn 18, it just keeps going. And that's the other thing that's been so surprising with me is this life of facilitating your kids' passions is a forever thing. We facilitate and connect and live in partnership with your children like their whole lives. And so it's really important to question the way people are telling you how to parent your kids now, because you have them childhood's so short, and I'm thinking I have the rest of my life. I have like 50 more years with these kids. And I thank God
No.
I did it that way, like because now we have a great relationship and I'll be facilitating their interests and passions and connecting with them and living what I have their whole childhoods for the rest of their life with them. And it's such a blessing. Yeah. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and talk about this, Belinda. It's been so fun.
Oh, thank you so much and thank you for thank you for your books and thank you for sharing your stories. And I also want to say for people who are listening to this, if you are homeschooling and you're struggling because you're creating a school at home, I would advise, I would encourage you, whoever you are, to throw everything aside, just push it all away and just start from scratch and just say, like, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to do whatever you feel like doing and allowing your child to have the time to find themselves. And if this takes a year and then you guys take another year and it turns out that you are flailing, school's always going to be there. Drop them back into school.
Yeah, I love that. Good advice. Yeah, and that's a good thing to tell people too when they're asking you, like, "Oh, you're homeschooling. How long are you going to do that for?" You just say, "Well, as long as it works." You don't have to commit to anything.
Forever.
You take it
Right.
one day at a time and just see how it goes for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have
Thank
support.
you, Dayna.
Mhm. You're so welcome. Thank you so much, Belinda. And I wanted to share that if anybody wants to connect with me, you can go to daynamartin.com. I have articles and videos, all kinds of resources there for you, as well as my books, links to purchase those. And I also have a private unschooling group. It's radicalunschoolingcom. It's $5.99 a month. It's very affordable. And we do group coaching every week. And there's tons of classes that I have on there and workshops and just tons of resources. So I want you to know that you are supported. I also have one-on-one coaching and Yeah, I'm here for you. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and share with you all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. And so your unschooling community online,
Yeah.
you guys get together regularly with you
Yes.
directly?
Yes. Yeah.
And then
One-on-one and
also, is
also
there
group
just,
coaching.
yeah, like a whole community of unschoolers that are
Yes.
supporting each other?
Yeah, that's right. And so I also have a Facebook group. So if you're not interested in the paid group, which is a private group, I started that because there were so many trolls on Facebook. It was just really challenging. But I still have my Facebook group. We have like 35,000 members, 35,000 people that are unschooling. And I started it in like 2010 and it's grown a lot. So you can go on there and I interact in there. But then the private group is for more sacred space where people can like just get a lot of individual support. And so if you go to the Facebook group, it's Radical Unschooling. I'm happy to add you. And then if you want to join the private group, it's radicalunschoolingcom.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
Linda. You're welcome. I hope you have a happy Easter. Mhm.
I'm sorry you cut out.
I said, I hope you have a happy Easter. It's coming up.
Thank you. You
Have
as well.
fun.
And I look forward to another interview with you and your kids.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to do that. Just let me know and I'll be happy to come back on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bye.
Bye.